Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Mayor's Emergency Response Roundtable. Before we begin, I would like to take just a moment to thank the Mayor's Commission on Veterans Affairs. Yesterday, one of the few cities that actually carried out our observance and celebration, or not celebration, but observance of Memorial Day, and what a powerful short program that was, at least for me. And I want to thank all the folks that made that happen. Paul Phelps is the chair this year, and they just did an outstanding job, and really was pleased that we continued to. And the fire department, I don't think they even expected the fire department to show up, because they forgot to tell them, but they showed up with the fire things, and it was very nice. It's hard to believe that the first edition of this show aired 2 months ago, and we're still very much in this fight against the COVID-19 here in Chesapeake and around the nation. And to say that these are unprecedented times, and we hear that all the time, but that seems to be a huge understatement at this point. I can't imagine any citizen here or any other city who hasn't been touched in some way by this virus. So I do want to begin by thanking each of you, our Chesapeake residents, our business owners, for all you've done to help lessen this impact of COVID-19 locally. It's not been easy, and it's not going to be easy for some time to come, but knowing us in Chesapeake and the spirit that we have as a community, we will come out of this strong and united. So let me first introduce my guests here at the dais, and then we'll jump right in. I'm pleased to be joined by our school superintendent, Dr. Jared Cotton, our economic development director, Mr. Stephen Wright, and our city manager, Chris Price. And as you know, much of what we are doing here in the city, at the city level, and every city actually, is mandated by the governor's executive orders. We continue to work with his office closely to make sure that we're taking positive, proactive steps. We as a city, I'm so proud to say, are partially reopening. We are 1 week into that, and I want to ask our city manager to comment and explain some of the things we are doing, some of the things we're not doing. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that, and appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk with our community a little bit about where we've been and where we're going. It is hard to believe that it's been a little over 2 months since this began. We declared the local state of emergency on March 13th. We started to ramp down services, city services, consistent with the governor's executive order. But I'm very pleased that we were able to maintain the provision of services throughout the pandemic, although in different service delivery ways. So a lot of services moved to online or telephonic or webinar, remote service delivery. We had a suspension of some services, a closure of some facilities, but we really tried to do our best to make sure we're providing as many services as possible to the community. And I will tell you that I'm very pleased that even as we were ramping down some of the services and having to close some of the facilities, we were already starting to look ahead from the very beginning of this. We were already starting to look ahead towards what would reopening look like, recognizing that we wanted to be a leader in demonstrating how a company or an organization could partially reopen in a safe and responsible manner to ensure that business gets done, but that your employees remain safe and that your customers remain safe. And I'm very pleased that as we now enter the second week of the city's partial reopening, things are going very well. We are maintaining the physical distancing in our lobby and in our community spaces. We are providing protective equipment to our employees, making masks and protective equipment available to our customers should they so choose. and it's gone very, very well. And a lot of the services still remain available online, and we would still encourage people to take advantage of online services. I think it's, as we start to ramp back up, it is important to know that we've learned a lot throughout the pandemic about online service delivery, and it's still the best way if you need to access a program or a service of the city. I would suggest calling first, going online, seeing if you can get that service through remote delivery, and take advantage of that if you can. If not, of course, feel free to come in, and we'll provide those services here in the complex. But I think it is good to start entering this phase one of the reopening. And we're looking forward to phase two already. So while not all of our facilities are open, we're reopening more and more as we move through the phases. And we want to continue to be a leader to make sure that we're doing everything as safe as we can in a responsible manner, but to make sure that we're really providing the types and quality of services that the community expects and deserve from us. And I do want to say I'm very proud of our team here in Chesapeake. The employees have really taken this on and taken it to heart that they want to provide those services to the community and get back up and running as quickly as possible while remaining safe. So thank you to the team, and thank you to the citizens and businesses of Chesapeake. I think we're very fortunate to live here in this city. We've had just excellent response from the community about what we've done, great suggestions about ways that we could retool what we're doing. We're all learning every day about ways we can do better. So I really appreciate those suggestions. We've implemented many of those. We've gotten a lot of kudos from the business community about how our efforts to maintain things like permitting and inspections throughout the pandemic have made sure that we're well prepared to recover. So very pleased with what we've been able to do, and again, very thankful for the cooperation and support that we've had from our citizens in the business community.
Thank you. We are all very, very, very excited about what you have done with our staff through your leadership, Mr. Price. I tell you, as you talk about going carefully, I know that things seems like the rules continue to change. So we have to, I guess the key word here is be flexible, be willing to take one step forward or a couple steps back. I know we're dealing with how to even run a council meeting. How far do we sit apart? Do we wear masks? All those questions. But and we're not always going to get it right. I think that's what we need to make sure that the community understands that we're doing the best we can, but no one has a crystal ball. And so there are some things that the governor is going to be allowing, but not yet set any timelines. How are we dealing with those issues?
So for now, we're trying to stick with the phase one guidelines, and I would you can check those out on the city's website to see all of the COVID-related information and take a look at our phase one reopening plans. But from a big picture perspective, services that we're able to provide while limiting gatherings to under 10 people and where we can maintain 6 feet of distance apart. Most of those are starting to reopen. Our passive use recreation opportunities, so some of the passive use parks and trails are open. Some of the tennis courts are open for individual play, pickleball, those kind of things. Some of the neighborhood playgrounds have started to reopen. Really, the facilities where people can use the facilities, but not attract much of a crowd. So that's where we're at right now. Phase two, once we enter that stage of the recovery, will get us more from up to 10 people to up to 50. So the kinds of facilities that can accommodate larger groups. So that would be a reopening of some of our community centers. Right now, we're just providing curbside library service, but phase two would allow for in-person library service. Some of the larger athletic events and things with larger group participation would open up in phase two. And we're hoping for that within the next few weeks. But as you said, we continue to monitor the situation and respond as appropriate, take the lessons we've learned, and make sure we're doing better each day.
Thank you. I know my grandson is waiting for the germs to go away so he can get on those playground equipment. That's what my daughter tells him, the germs are still here. So 2020 has been an enormous challenge for our businesses. I'm amazed with some of the things that they're doing to keep going. It's been a tough road for them. I've asked our economic director, Steve Wright, to join us for a look at some of those ways that the city, the state, and federal government are doing or how they're working together to help. Steve, would you mind giving us some information on this?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, and thanks so much for giving me an opportunity to address our business community. It's really been a challenge, COVID-19, for us, because economic development is really about relationships. And it's been tough to cultivate and enhance those relationships without being able to get face-to-face. But we've been utilizing technology as best we can, and we think that we're on the right track to maintain those relationships. In terms of what businesses have seen and what they can look forward to seeing, I think most of the attention so far has been on the federal side in terms of the CARES Act money that was supposed to flow directly to small businesses. I think you'll recall very early on in the process, I had an opportunity to talk a little bit about the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program, as well as the Emergency Disaster Loan Program. Congress appropriated over $660 billion for those programs to really flow directly to the small businesses. So far the results have been somewhat mixed. Right now, after the second wave of funding was made available, there's still probably about $150 billion that have not been spent. I think a lot of that is because there's a lot of concern and question about what parts of those loans are going to be forgivable. And until there's a little bit more clarity on that, I think some of the businesses have and will continue to be a little gun-shy about applying for those federal funds. And even if they receive those federal funds, some of the businesses are deciding not to spend that money until they have that clarity. But I am pleased to say that we have heard good outcomes from the PPP program as well. I've spoken with a couple of businesses that have really been able to utilize that as a lifeline. Of course, it's important to remember that those programs were really set up to help businesses for about 2.5 months. So we're approaching that period where that help is either going to have to be extended or hopefully as the city, state, country starts to reopen, the need won't be there as much. I should also indicate that something that the city is working very closely with the Economic Development Authority on is the establishment of a small business grant program. And this is going to be a program that's going to be eligible to businesses that have not received any level of federal funding so far. A couple of weeks ago, I know City Council approved some community development block grant funds to be utilized for that program, and I think we're getting really close to start pushing that money out into the community. I think initially we're going to focus on SWAM businesses and businesses in low to moderate income areas, but there will be another round of funding that we believe will come from the CARES Act, and that will allow us to be a lot more flexible in terms of which businesses will be able to take advantage of that program. So I would encourage all businesses out there, stay tuned. Please continue to visit the Economic Development website. That's ChesapeakeVA.biz, B-I-Z, because when that information is made available, we'll want you to get it and apply for those programs as quickly as possible.
Right, thank you. And let me ask a question that maybe you or our manager may want to or may be able to answer. I know at our last council meeting, we certainly talked about those programs, and we also talked about this new regulation, I guess, or order that restaurants could expand. How many, do you know approximately how many, what are some of the positives and negatives that you've heard from that?
Well, I'll tell you, Mayor, when the governor opened up restaurants to start utilizing outdoor seating, there was a lot of initial confusion. But I think it speaks to the ability for the city to be flexible. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to the Department of Development and Permits, because they were Johnny on the spot, looking at the existing regulations and kind of tweaking those regulations so that businesses could comply with ease. Initially, we were looking at trying to get businesses to apply, but over time, based on the feedback that we were hearing from those businesses, they wanted it to be even easier, and they wanted it to be as inexpensive as possible. And thanks to the manager's office and development and permits, we were able to craft a program so that businesses could take advantage of outdoor seating, even bring in tents as long as they were under a certain size, and they could do it for free with little to no difficulty in terms of working with the city. So I know I spoke to at least 2 or 3 restaurants. They called me and said, Steve, we are eternally grateful to the city because just allowing them to open up a little bit is going to help them kind of get over the hump with this. So I think that's definitely kudos, Mr. Mayor, to you and the manager for that leadership.
Thank you. I really do appreciate our city's approach to that. We didn't try to solve every problem before it came up. We said, how can we make this happen for the businesses? And they came and sort of developed a procedure as it went along. And I think that was a successful way of handling that, although still many other challenges. I know many of the business restaurant owners have told me that it's great, but rainy days, you can't do but so much business on those places. We need to try to promote them opening at least partially the inside services as well. I know my wife and I have been to a couple of businesses eating outside, and it's been quite delightful. So good. How about technology, manufacturing, distribution, some of the larger companies? Any effects for them or anything that we have going on for the larger companies?
I think in terms of how we're dealing with some of these larger companies and the small ones to boot, our strategy during COVID-19 has been, number one, we want to provide service and resources to those businesses. And on the other side, we want to really help those businesses position themselves for the recovery and the reopening. With the larger businesses, what we've seen is that there hasn't been too much of a downturn, particularly with our manufacturers. I think manufacturers really across the state of Virginia started early in changing the way that they did business, changing some of their manufacturing processes. They started spacing people apart. They started implementing social distancing and sanitizing guidelines very early on. And as a result, most of the manufacturers that we've contacted have not significantly been impacted by COVID. So we're real pleased to hear that. I'll also mention that on top of manufacturing, I think the distribution and logistics industry has gone somewhat unscathed. I do know, and I spoke with someone at the port, Virginia Port Authority earlier today, they are experiencing a bit of a downturn. But I should say this is kind of their calm before the storm period anyway. They are seeing imports are a little on the low sides. Exports, however, remain strong. I think on the import side, it's important to remember that when COVID kicked off, it was really coming on the heels of the Chinese New Year, which is when a lot of manufacturers in China shut down. Then you had the tariff situation, and then COVID-19 hit. So in China, a lot of the manufacturers there are just starting to ramp up their manufacturing processes. So we're hopeful that as they ramp up manufacturing, we'll continue to see more imports come in. And now is about the time where those imports and those products really need to come in, because now is the time when retailers typically get ready for the Christmas shopping season. So we're hoping things will continue to improve, and all of us will be able to take advantage of that and spend more money in Chesapeake.
Thank you for being here. Anything you want to add that I have not asked you?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to, again, say thank you and just remind all the businesses out there, it's really, really important for them to stay abreast of our website. We have tried to do as best a job as we can to provide every resource that we come across. We want to get it on the website. We don't know everything, but we try to tap as many sources and resources as we can. And once we find a resource, we want to make it available to the business community. So again, I'd say have all the businesses stay tuned to ChesapeakeVA.biz.
Thank you again. So of all the things that I'm hearing from folks, we certainly have a lot of concern about our small businesses, large businesses, how the city's running, but a lot of anxiety about what's happening in the schools and what's going to happen. I'm reminded, Dr. Cotton, when I first started teaching, I had the job of calling the names of graduation, and we were at the stadium at Great Bridge High School, and as it got darker, our principal, Harry Blevins, nodded for one of the teachers to turn on the lights. Well, the lights didn't work, and so the darker it got, the worse it got. So finally, I think they were driving cars out onto the football field to watch people. So it was the conversation for a long time about that particular graduation. But this year tops that. I mean, 2020 is a year that we will never forget. So would you please start just addressing some of the issues that you've been dealing with?
Sure. All of our students have been impacted by what's occurring. I would say preschool through high school, through seniors have all been impacted. But I would also argue that our seniors have been impacted the most in that this is such a special year for them. Their senior year, proms, final sporting events, graduation, award ceremonies. So this has been particularly challenging. And we were trying to figure out ways to really honor our seniors for the great work that they've done and to tell them how proud we are of our students. We did put out a survey where we gathered lots of feedback from the community. I also met with some student leaders to get feedback as well. But one of the things that I can assure you is not 100% of folks are going to be happy with whatever plan we put in place. So our method was to really make sure that we honor our students and that we keep our students in the forefront. And what was very clear from our students as well as our parents is they wanted a graduation ceremony of sorts. So one of the things that we were able to do is to secure some dates at the Chartway Arena at Old Dominion in August, and those dates have already been shared with our community. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have an announcement that will go out with more specifics to our families this week. We're holding out hope, and of course, some of our regional colleagues have decided that's not even in the picture, but we think hope is an important thing to have right now. We're hopeful that in August, things will look different, and even if we can't have a graduation like every other graduation, maybe we have to have some health guidelines in place or some precautions in place. We're going to do everything we can to make that happen. Now, our fallback position is a virtual graduation ceremony that will occur if we are not able to have this in-person graduation in August. But I will tell you that we didn't want this one event to be the only event. We wanted to create lots of exciting events for our seniors, and I'm excited to tell you about our Senior Celebration Week, our celebration experience. That's the first week in June, and we've already shared some information about this. It's an in-person event at each of our high schools. All of our students will have an individual moment of recognition. Our seniors can bring guests with them to join them in the car as they go to our schools, and I appreciate all the assistance we received from the city as well as the police department as we're looking at logistics of this event. All students will have their names called. We'll be able to take pictures. We're going to have professional photographs taken of our graduates and their guests, so that will be a special experience in early June. We're also doing a Light the Night experience where we're lighting our stadium lights for 20 minutes to honor at 8:20, which is 2020, to honor on the night of their graduation that was originally scheduled to honor our seniors. And we're also going to be saluting our seniors with a virtual YouTube event highlighting all of our schools on June 13th at 7 p.m. And so we have lots of great events going on for graduation. Still not enough because but it's different from what our students and families were expecting. But again, as I talk to my team, we want to honor our students and our families, and I feel like we have a good plan in place to do that.
Right, thank you. So is it too early to start talking about I know you, some of the plans for next year? Are there mandates, or is each locality kind of on their own to decide, and are you looking at regional, all school systems in Hampton Roads, for example? What are some of the issues and how you deal with that?
Well, a little bit of all of the above. I am on a statewide work group with the Secretary of Education where we're looking at this, and there are other work groups that are looking at ideas as well. And summer school, obviously, we're looking at more of a virtual summer school approach. And then we have information that we're putting out to our community for summer school K through 12, and it's really more remedial in nature and focusing on virtual. As far as next school year, of course, the big challenge we have is how are we going to come back to school? And what we've done is we've spent a lot of time putting some plans together. I have a team together that's working on this from all aspects of the school division. There are several scenarios that we're looking at. There could be a virtual approach, which we're kind of in right now with the virtual learning approach, which has its challenges. There's a hybrid plan approach where students spend certain days and other days in school, and other days they receive virtual instruction on days when they're not in school. And then, of course, a more traditional model where they are in school but with safeguards and precautions and social distancing. But as you've probably read and heard, it's very difficult to do some of these things in a school setting. You can't have more than a certain number of students in a classroom. Bus transportation is going to be certainly a challenge. School lunch, you can't have assemblies. Some of these kinds of things all have to be taken into account. All of these decisions are being made now. We were proactive and we put a local team together to work on this. But the state is also providing some guidance. But from what I understand, we're going to get some parameters that we can work within that structure. But the thing that I want everybody to know is we are coming back in the fall. Now, how we come back initially may look different than where we are now, or could look different after we open and get started. But we do continue to hear rumors that school's not coming back in the fall. We are coming back, for sure. Just the method where we come back. But we're going to have to be much more versatile in how we provide instruction. And what I've told my team is we have to be ready to plan and provide instruction online and in person at a moment's notice. And that has to be the new way that we provide instruction moving forward.
Well, I guess that's really good news, and the fact that you are going to be opening in some fashion or another, right? Yeah.
Yes, we are coming back, and of course, you know that we've been working hard to provide devices and support our families with internet. That's been the biggest barrier. But we also know that our younger students have a very difficult time with the online virtual learning. So in some scenarios that we've looked at, when you look at other countries, some of the other countries have brought back the younger students first before they bring back the middle or high school students. So there's lots of different scenarios to consider.
Is that because of the technology gap, I guess?
The technology gap is a part of that, but also very young children need more of the hands-on, in-person instruction versus the online.
Right.
Online instruction is not particularly easy if you haven't had a lot of experience with that mode of instruction. So in some ways, it's more challenging. So we're looking at all of those different things, but we have work to do, and we're going to provide instruction as the school year starts, and that's something we're going to communicate to our families as soon as we can.
I know that people are anxious to hear it, and I know you will do that as soon as you have a plan in place and know exactly what you're going to do. You'll do a good job communicate that, and I know our staff will be glad to help you get that word out in any way we can. So thank you for being here. Anything else that you'd like to add that I haven't asked?
No, just I mentioned summer school and plans for next year as well as graduation. We are very busy trying to close out the year because, as you know, things happen so suddenly that our students and staff had to leave, frankly, in a hurry, where they did not have time to close out the year officially. We are going to be providing information to our families because we know we have students and families and staff who need to get back into the buildings in order to get their personal items. And we also have teachers and staff members who need to clean out their classrooms to prepare for summer cleaning and those kinds of things. So we are working on a plan to safely do that. So I know if there are parents out there or students out there who feel they've left something in the school buildings, know that we're going to be providing some more information about that so that they can get in there and get what they need.
Thank you.
Sure.
So before we close, I understand that the governor did make an announcement today advising us all to wear masks in public places. I'm pleased that he did not make it required, because I think most people do use good judgment. And but I think if you ask Dr. Welch, our health director, should you wear a mask or not, she'd say it's extremely important to keep from spreading the COVID-19. So I know you all will use good judgment when wearing a mask, and ask that you please remind one another to do it. I know my wife reminds me every time I get out of the house. So that being said, I will say finally that there is a great deal of misinformation about COVID-19. So it's vital that you know that the source that you are going to is reliable and is telling the truth. I would ask you to go to the city website. We do have abundant amount of information. That's at cityofchesapeake.net, and the city social page, social media page. So I encourage you to use those sources. With that in mind, we'll close this edition of the Roundtable, and I ask you to please continue to stay safe, wear your mask, keep that 6-foot social distance, and wash your hands frequently. Thank you for joining us today.